All right, so welcome everyone to Intro to Coding Live. This is going to be the November 28th through December 15th, the holiday edition 2022. This is brought to you by Code Platoon. This is a coding camp for veterans and spouses. So hopefully everyone in class is either a veteran or a spouse, and that is what's required to go to Code Platoon. So just a little inspirational quote here to get us started off. So to me, programming is more than important practical art. It is also a gigantic undertaking in the foundations of knowledge. One of the core concepts that we're going to cover as we move through the slides tonight and throughout the course is learning how to think like a programmer. So much of this is going to come down to basically your ability to think in a manner that you can easily translate, or sometimes a little bit more difficultly translate into something the computer understands. And we'll go into some examples of that here in a little bit. So first off, just a little bit about myself. So my name is Charles Kubiak. I'm here in Chicago, Illinois, where Code Platoon is headquartered. I am the volunteer coordinator for Code Platoon, along with being the Coding Prep Bootcamp instructor, which is now officially been changed to Intro to Coding Live. I'm sorry, what's that? Okay, so on top of working at Code Platoon, I am basically I'm part-time at Code Platoon. My day job is I am a senior software crafter at Light, which is a custom consulting or custom software consulting company based here out of Chicago. And right now I am currently working on a contract for the DoD. So all the vets in here went through a MEPS, so a military entrance processing station. Maybe some of you have even worked at one. I went through boot camp in 2001. So in fact, I flew out of Lansing, Michigan, the evening of September 9th, 2001. My first day of boot camp was September 10th, 2001. And then September 11th happened. When I joined, and pretty much everyone from like 1995 or 1997 all the way until February of 2021 joined on the exact same piece of software, which is fairly amazing that a piece of software, the same version of the software with only minor updates, lasted that long. That's pretty unheard of. However, it was time for a change. So we took it, we modernized it, we moved it into the secret gov cloud on AWS, and we built out a modern web application that they use basically as HR software to track all the people that want to enlist in the military. So all of that's been brought into modern day web development instead of being on a 25-year-old piece of enterprise software where all the nuts and bolts were falling out of it on a daily basis. So there was certain areas that they could no longer use a mouse. Some areas could. No one knew why you weren't able to use a mouse from a certain computer, but you could use a mouse from the computer next to it. And it was just 25-year-old software. If you noticed, I started at Light in May of 2019. And immediately before that, I went to Code Platoon. I graduated in Hotel Platoon. I went from January 2019 to April of 2019. And one of the great things about Code Platoon, and this is different than any other boot camps that I'm aware of at this point, all of them will offer career services and try and get you hired or network within the industry. Every cycle, Light offers a competitive, basically internship or apprenticeship, where Code Platoon goes out. They're networking within the tech community. A lot of the jobs are in Chicago. Some of them are going to be national. Some of them have even been international. And they're basically getting companies to commit to hiring a recent Code Platoon graduate as a internship or an apprenticeship that typically lasts from 3 to 6 months. It's paid, and all of those opportunities are with the intention that they want to hire you as a full-time developer if everything works out. So for me, between getting out of the Marine Corps in 2005 and going to Code Platoon in 2019, I was in finance for about 13 and a half, 14 years, and got really burnt out on it and was just done with it. Couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't look at the stock market anymore. Sick of people screaming at me all day long. And so I said, I want to do something different. And I went to the VA. I went through what they call the vocational rehab, which basically for me was just getting a guidance counselor. And my guidance counselor, who was an amazing guy who eventually put me onto Code Platoon, his first suggestion was like, well, if you're sick of working with brokerage firms, why don't you go work for an insurance company? And I was just like, that sounds even worse. So, and in his cubicle, he had a flyer for Code Platoon hanging up, and I was like, what's that? And he's like, oh, well, that would be a career change, but that's where vets and spouses can go to learn how to code. If that's something you're interested in, I can put you in touch with the person in charge of it. And Code Platoon was much smaller at the time. So he gave me Rod's email, who's the CEO of Code Platoon, and basically talked to him, just had a couple of emails back and forth, said, okay, this sounds like something I want to do. Applied, got in, went through it, interviewed at 6 companies, got in at Athletic, and I've been there ever since. I went from being an apprentice for 6 months to being a software crafter to now being a senior software crafter. And as far as like transitions from going from basically having like a 13, 14-year career and something that was not related to what I'm doing today, it was about as smooth of a transition as I could hope for. So on here is my email address, charles@codeplatoon.org. You've all been emailed by me. If you have any questions, you can email me there. I do recommend though, and where you're more likely to get a quick response from me is if you Slack me. I don't get a chance to check the Code Platoon email throughout the day all day long, but with Slack, I am pretty much loaded and ready to go whenever I need it. So I've got like intro to coding here. I'm one of the moderators here, and like, this is my company. This is a company that I'm working with. This is my client, and this is Code Platoon. So all day long, even if I'm doing something else and you need to ping me or something like that, it's an emergency, whatever, you've got a question, you got jammed up on something, just shoot me a Slack message. And I'm usually pretty good about responding. Anytime between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Central Time, you'll get a response from me almost immediately. Prior to 9 a.m., I'm usually getting ready for work or something like that. All right, so about Code Platoon. Code Platoon is a 501c3 nonprofit coding bootcamp for veterans and military spouses. It's 14 weeks long. Within the curriculum for Code Platoon, you're going to learn everything you need to learn to build a full stack web application, modern web application. So that's going to be Python for the back end, and you're going to use the Django framework, which is basically helps you set up a backend server that serves up information and talks to a database. You're going to learn JavaScript, which is what we're going to be touching on tonight and throughout these next 9 sessions. And that basically translates into the React framework. And that is what allows you to build interactive web applications. So when you are, we say website still for almost everything, but most big modern websites that you're working with are actually web applications, right? A website is something that may have some information, some pictures, something on it, and you can look at it, you can read it, and that's about all you can do with it. But like, if let's say if you go to Amazon, or if you go to eBay or Facebook, those are all web applications, right? Like those are interactive components that you can click on the screen, things happen. You can basically fill out forms, you can save things to the database. Those applications can find things in the database and serve you that information, right? So if I go to Amazon, I type something, I type toasters into the search bar, I submit it. Amazon's going back, querying a database for toasters, doing some sort of magic with its algorithm, and then presenting you in toasters in little boxes in an order that basically will hopefully maximize your desire to buy and their profitability, right? And so that's, Amazon isn't a website, it's a web application, right? You have to log into it, it saves your information. All of those things are going to be something that's telling you that you're actually using a web application. You're also going to learn HTML and CSS, so that can be used for static websites, which again, static, nothing changes, or it is also used to basically style and design dynamic web applications. After completing the program, the veteran or military spouse will be hireable as a junior full stack web developer and eligible for an internship through one of our generous host companies. So I know I touched on that already a little bit. Some programming experience is required to get in. So we're kind of over here in the bootcamp prep area. And this also gets changed to intro to coding. And we will, Code Platoon brings you here, and then basically the software developer. The Code Platoon application is not competitive. Like they don't limit, like we only take 30 people each class or anything like that. Basically, they'll take everyone that meets a certain standard. So and I don't know what like the points cutoff is or anything like that, but I think they give you 10 or 12 questions and you can score between 1 and 10 on them. Each of them, excuse me. And if you score enough points across all of the questions, you're in. And you do have the ability to submit it and get it rescored one time, I believe, on the application. So like they can give you some feedback on that. And so you're competing against yourself and your own knowledge level, but it's not like the first 30 or 40 people each cycle get in. If 30 people make it, 30 people go to class. If 50 people make it, they'll hire extra TAs for that cycle, and 50 people get to go to class that cycle. I think the average class size has been around like 40 to 45 the last 4 or 5 cycles. All right. And who is Bootcamp Prep for? So sorry, I haven't updated all the instances of Bootcamp Prep. Just pretend it says intro to coding wherever you see it. A little prior experience coding, if not a big deal. We're going to start from the very basic building blocks. If you've already taken the intro to coding, just the regular one, that's pre-recorded, we basically, if you looked at the list of challenges, it's the same challenges. We're going to cover it. I may not cover it the exact same way that the recording does it. And again, the big benefit from this is that you are able to ask questions live. And also, I will say another benefit is basically like I work for Code Platoon. I graduated from Code Platoon. I think everyone should learn to code. If you've got kids, you should teach them to code as early as possible. This is a great career if you're adept and like you're even somewhat interested in doing this. Like you can do a lot of other things that might be boring or that you're not interested in for a lot less money than you will being a programmer. And being a programmer, honestly, is like assembling jigsaw puzzles all day long. You've got to go out and find the pieces, and you got to fit the pieces in the right place. And sometimes the pieces make sense, sometimes the pieces are broken, sometimes the pieces are from a different puzzle, and you've got to figure out how to make it all work out. That being said, I hope all of you get interested in learning to code and go on to become software developers. We need more software developers in the world. However, if you decide that Code Platoon is not right for you, that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to sit here and say like you've got to go to Code Platoon. There's other options out there. I feel that Code Platoon makes a really strong argument for itself, but there are some other good coding boot camps out there. Again, I don't know of any that do the internship model like Code Platoon does, but there are choices out there because sometimes like physical locations work out better, whatever it is. That being said, as you continue to learn to code throughout this course, once this course is done, if you decide to apply for Code Platoon, if you get into Code Platoon, you'll be seeing more of me as the volunteer coordinator because I line up all of the mentors and TAs and mock interviewers and resume coaches each cycle for Code Platoon. So you'll see me in class that way. But even if you just do this and you sign up for a different boot camp or you just decide to go alone, if you ever need help, you're always more than welcome to Slack me. You're always more than welcome to drop questions into the intro to coding channel. One of the people that, I mean, pretty much everyone in there is a volunteer. Like I work contract work for Code Platoon, but when I'm answering questions in the intro to coding, I don't charge for that. Like all the people in there answering questions just like coding, like helping people out get their start, and they're all volunteering and you'll see it's a feeding frenzy in there. If you drop a question and then you'll have 5 people trying to answer it at the same time. Right. So and that is a resource that you've unlocked and you have it for as long as you want to use it. No questions asked. All right. So if you've never coded before, that's fine. You're in the right spot. You were able to get into Zoom. That's basically about all you need to do to start learning in this class. Anyone interested in learning code or interested in attending a boot camp like Code Platoon? So we have some myths about programming. You have to be a math wizard. So if you want to be a data analyst, you have to be a math wizard. If you want to be a data scientist, you have to be a scientist and a math wizard, right? Like if you want to learn how to program computers, it very rarely in 3 years of working on the same project, I've only had to create quote like unquote like one algorithm. And that was basically if someone handed me a stack of papers at X number of pages, I had to give the people processing the paperwork so many days to do it. Right. And like that's the most difficult algorithm I've had to write for production code for a client in 3 years. Right. So like I suck at algebra and geometry. 8th grade was a long time ago. I don't remember any of it. I don't need it to be a software, like a web application developer. Now, if I want to, like the little bit of data science that I've dabbled in and Code Platoon when I was going through, I don't know if they do it still or not, had like 2 days of data science. And like when they start getting into like Gaussian curves and stuff like that, my eyes glazed over. Like there's no way I was going to do anything with that information. So except look it up or find someone who is good at math to help me with the problem if I ever run across it. So you have to be an introvert loner to be good at coding. That is definitely not true. In fact, most modern software teams will have a certain amount of self-organizing. Some people like to be left alone, just want to talk to the machine, don't want to talk to people. You'll run into those people, but we also need software developers that can go out there and interface with the client or go stand in front of meetings and present what's going on. Software development is actually very collaborative. And so that is something that you'll work with if you decide to go to Code Platoon. They do have what's called pair programming. And I mean, that is a very common practice in software development. Most of the time people aren't writing software on their own. They're paired with at least one other person, or you may even do some mob development. If it's something exceptionally tricky, you may have 3 or 4 developers working on the same problem at the same time, trying to figure it out. So so I see, are people having a problem seeing what's on my screen?
No, I'm seeing it just fine.
Okay. It may be a resolution thing here then.
Yeah, I I could see it, but it's cut off.
Where is it cut off?
I can't see past like math wizard, introvert, something. It might be something on my end if everyone else is seeing it fine, but it looks like your words are cut off.
It could be the resolution on your computer, possibly. Are you using Zoom browser or Zoom the program?
I think I'm using the app. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think I'm using the app.
Okay. Yeah, not sure.
Okay, thank you.
So does it help if I go into presentation mode? Can you see everything now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's my laptop because yeah, everything's still cut off. But it's no fault of yours. I was just wondering if everyone was
Let me do this here real quick. So thanks for letting me know. I have PDF these. I was going to drop this into the, can I drop a file into Zoom?
You should be able to into the chat.
Let's see here. Everyone in meeting. It's definitely not letting me pull it from my desktop.
If not, email would work.
Yeah. Here, let me.
I've been working with a career counselor. That's the only reason I know about the Zoom detail, by the way.
Here, let me drop this into intro to code. Do. All right, and I will update this after class tonight. I'm going to go through and make sure that everything says intro to coding live absolutely everywhere. But you have that in there now. You should be able to pull that down and then you can follow along and hopefully see things a little clearer. All right, so cool. So you just sit at your desk and code all day long. That is definitely not true. I worked a full 8 hours today and I wrote almost no code today. Basically coming back from a long holiday weekend, had to go into a bunch of meetings with the client and explain kind of what the plan is for the rest of the year. Had some mandatory training that I had to take, and then got socked with like one last meeting helping out a project manager at the end of the day. And there'll be days where all I do is write code, but there'll be days where I don't. And more often than not, it's a blend of like meetings. So like you have your daily stand up where you go in and ask for help if you need it, talk about what's going on, what you've got going on for the day, what you did the day before, and just a chance to make sure that everyone's got a chance to jump in and collaborate where needed. And then lots and lots of planning sessions as we lay out what the roadmap is going to be for the software that we're currently writing. So programming is boring. I mean, hopefully by the end of this class, you'll take away if you're somewhat interested in programming, or if programming is boring, or if programming is intolerable. that just comes down to individual choice, I guess. And then one programming language is better than the other. This one is very contentious, and people tend to, just like any other part of life, we tend to grab onto like whatever the trend is. So kind of like the last 10 years, like Python was going to replace every other language on the face of the planet. We'd all be writing code in Python, and no one was ever going to write anything that wasn't in Python for forever and ever and ever. And that has kind of cooled off because we found that while Python is an amazing language and it's one of the languages you cover in Code Platoon, there's certain things that other languages do better, and that's why those languages exist. And Python has been one of those languages that has been a great job, where it's been able to handle all of these different applications that have been thrown at it. But it can't do everything just by the nature of the underlying language. And then also, you only need to know one programming language. I went through Code Platoon and basically did JavaScript and Python, just like everyone else who will go through Code Platoon. I then went to 8th Light, and they said, okay, great, you know JavaScript and Python, those are two dynamic languages. You need to learn Java. And then I learned Java, and then basically now I knew a strongly typed language, and they said, do you know any functional programming? No. Okay, well, now you need to learn Clojure and learn functional paradigm programming. And how about mobile? Okay, well, now you've got to learn Kotlin and Android for Kotlin. And so on and so forth. And now for the client that I've been working on for the last 3 years, I'm back in JavaScript, React, and working in Ruby on Rails. And so I would say the best language is the one that gets like that is included in your job offer. So if you go through Code Platoon and you learn JavaScript and Python, and you've got your heart just set on being a Python developer, and someone comes back and says, I'll pay you 75 or 80K a year to write Ruby, take the Ruby job. That's better than Python, right? Like whatever gets you paid is the best language. You can continue to play with Python on your own, or after you've been a developer for a year or two, you can then kind of write your own ticket and pick what your next step is in your career. But getting that first job, it's whatever language you can get it in. Unless it's like Adobe Cold Fusion or something like that. So don't do that. So yeah, as I've kind of been hinting at, all of these things are wrong. And so truths about programming, you only need to know the basic math operations. We're probably the most complex thing we'll get into in this class is the modulus or remainder operator and some floor division. And if you haven't heard of that, we're going to cover it, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use it or why you would use it. You absolutely have to be able to work on a team and communicate well. I tell this to everyone here. I tell it to everyone that I interact with at Code Platoon. And I'm sure people have heard it in life before, right? Like you'd rather work with the nice person that is still learning and doesn't know everything yet versus working with the person who knows everything and they're an absolute jerk about it, right? So no one wants to work with a jerk. We're all going to learn how to program. We're all going to learn how to program at different speeds. But as a potential hirer, and I am a hiring manager, and I have absolutely kicked someone, like basically nicked someone's interview that performed technically very well, but had an extremely poor attitude during the interview, right? So and again, this is for all the vets, all of the people that have that military background. The software development is a very different world at its like core foundational values. And we all hear about kind of like the horror stories of like the toxic bro culture at certain companies, and things along those lines. And I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, but I will also say that on the opposite end of that spectrum, some of the most successful, highly progressive companies in this country are all going to be tech companies, are all going to be software development companies. And that is a huge part of the DNA of a lot of these companies. So being able to get along with your teammates that are going to be from all walks of life, right? Like, I mean, it is going to be Democrats and Republicans and people that are religious and people that are trans and people that have all different sorts of beliefs. And you are going to be working with those people. And in the military, you're with those people and you don't always necessarily have to be nice with them, or sometimes you can even get away with being an outright jerk to them. Nothing will get you fired quicker in the tech world than the inability to work with your teammate just because they're different than you. So that is something like if you're not comfortable with that, like, more important than learning JavaScript is learning how to work with people from different walks of life, because like that is going to be your key to success. Coming out of a boot camp, you're going to know so coming out of any boot camp, and I don't care which one it is, you are ready. You've proven that you're ready to become a junior software developer. You are definitely not a junior software developer coming out of a boot camp. You still have a very long ways to go. And it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know yet. And so you're going to have a ton of learning. And so all of these prospective employers out there, there's going to be a lot of boot camp grads. Code Platoon helps set you apart in that, again, with like the interviewing process that they put you through with real companies. But the big differentiator is if you are nice, right? Like if you are out there, you are excited to learn, you are a good communicator, you're pleasant to work with, you're pleasant to interview with, that is going to be the biggest leg up on your competition for those first entry-level jobs, right? Like, because everyone kind of has the same background coming out of boot camp, but they're looking for those people that want to learn and that they want to work with. Like, this is someone that, and that's when you interview at my company as an interviewer, that's one of the questions that we go through in every debrief. Would you want to work with this person? If they were hiring them for a leadership position, would you want this person in charge of you? Right. And so like, those are all things that go into hiring and becoming a programmer. I'll get off my soapbox. So you have to be able to work with on a team and communicate well with others. Most of your time is researching how to solve the problem. So for every line of code that you write, especially when you're in new territory, there will be a significantly larger portion of time figuring out how to write that code, trying to figure out the solution. Writing the code itself is easy. It's figuring out how to apply the line of code and where you want to apply the line of code. Your code can impact millions. So again, boring, not boring is all perspective. But yeah, I mean, writing the software for maps, I mean, it's been live going on almost 2 years now, and I think we've had like 2 or 3 million entries go through there, right? So like anyone that's even shown the slightest amount of interest in joining the military has been processed through software that I've written. So you don't have to be anything to be a software programmer. You don't have to be a man, you don't have to be a woman. You can be all of those things. You can be trans, you can be non-binary. You can be anything you want to be, and you can be an amazing programmer. And I've seen it. So you'll use more than one language throughout your career. That is almost a guarantee. And if you want to come back to me in 20 years saying that, hey, I made it and I only wrote in one language, like, I guess lunch on me. But outside of that, you're probably going to use at least 2 or 3 languages throughout your career, if not more. And for those of you that are in it for the long haul, I can't even tell you what languages will be writing software in 10 years, 20 years from now, or how different the languages we're using now will look. Software languages evolve just like spoken languages do. They look different. JavaScript is a great petri dish for that. The JavaScript we're writing now today looks extremely different than the JavaScript we were even writing 4 or 5 years ago when I went through Code Platoon. For the React framework that we'll learn on the front end, we were using one set of code to help time things and how they appeared on the screen and how your server kept track of all of that. And right after I graduated Code Platoon, they introduced a new thing called hooks, which basically revolutionized how you work with the React framework. And everyone after my graduating class got to learn hooks. And we basically had to learn that on our own at our first jobs or whatever we moved on to. So languages will change, new versions of it will be released. It's always moving to be hopefully in a better direction. Sometimes they do stumble once in a while and they introduce something that doesn't go over as well as they'd like it to. And again, the best programming language is the one you know, or like I said, the one that's attached to your job offer. And some are better at some things than others. And programming is hard. Yes, programming can be very hard. Like I said, it's like assembling a ginormous puzzle, and there's no picture on the box most of the time. Or the picture on the box was written by someone else on the internet that was trying to save the same problem like 5 years ago in a slightly different version of the language that you're working in. There's a difference between knowing the syntax and structure of a language versus knowing how to apply the logic to solve problems. So by necessity, I am going to teach you some syntax here, but the main takeaway from this course is I am, again, trying to teach you how to start thinking like a programmer and how to identify some of these basic building blocks that we're going to go over here next and where to apply them when solving one of these challenges. Because it's great if you know the exact syntax for how to write a loop, which is a concept we'll get into in JavaScript to solve a problem. But if you don't know when and where you should be using a loop, that syntax doesn't help. Now, if you know when, like if you can look at a problem and say, hey, I need a loop right here, now you can solve it in JavaScript, or you could go out and say, how do I write a loop in Ruby? And now you can solve the problem in Ruby. Or how do I write a loop in Python or in Java or any of these dozens of other languages? And so it's more important that you learn when to use these base concepts rather than memorizing the syntax. Because like I'm going on over 4 years now, and I still look up syntax every day. That never goes away. I mean, I'm always impressed by people that can just like crank out a ton of stuff from memory. But I need to remember my mom's birthday too. So I have to keep some space in my brain for other things other than programming syntax. And the one thing that never forgets programming syntax is Google. And it's not cheating. It's not a test. Like all day long, every software developer on the face of the planet is just out there Googling, right? Because we're all trying to figure out what wheel to attach to our software. And somebody has already invented the shopping cart wheel, the monster truck tire, right? Like all these things. And we just need to figure out which wheel we need. And then we can find someone else who's already designed it and we can pull it in and basically change things here or there and kind of massage it into our program as we need it, or just use it as like the spark of inspiration for like that one missing thing that I wasn't quite getting. And I see someone else has done it that way, and I am able to replicate it in my language and my software for my specific problem. And we're all just copying each other. So as a beginner programmer, you are going to get frustrated. As an intermediate, a senior, and advanced, the best programmer on the face of the planet, you are going to get frustrated, because what is going to happen is you are going to get frustrated by some very, very easy, basic problems because it is new to you, right? It's the same problems I got angry at 4 or 5 years ago, right? Now, I go in and I still get, I was trying to rewrite a piece of software for Code Platoon last night, and with like because I drugged my feet and end of day cut off today, and was getting super frustrated. I had to take a step back and had to breathe and figure out what I was doing wrong. But like the problem I was trying to solve was significantly more difficult than anything that we would run into like in this. So you, by the end of session 9, could come back and look at some of the problems that we're going to work this Wednesday, and you'll be like, wow, I can't believe I ever struggled with this. And so I'm not saying you have to be a software developer for 4 or 5 years before you look back at this stuff and say, man, that was easy. You are going to, by the end of this class, you are going to look at the first problems in this class and be like, man, that was really easy. And that is how quickly we will learn and progress with this stuff. But you will never stop learning. You will never stop tackling tougher challenges. There's always a faster way to do it. There's always a better way to do it. There's always bigger, badder problems out there. But what is terrifying today will be something that you will have the tools in your toolbox to tackle weeks, months, years from now. So you might think programming is not for you just because you just don't get it. That is natural. There is all sorts of literature and everything else is going on as far as like imposter syndrome and the feeling like that you don't belong, that you're not a real programmer. Everyone gets it, except maybe Elon Musk. He doesn't have imposter syndrome. He's out there like slamming all the buttons on the dashboard wherever he goes with maximum confidence. But for us mere mortals, you will always feel like, and everyone gets it to different degrees, but you are not alone if at the end of this class or the end of the next class you sit there and go like, I can't do this, this isn't for me. Like everyone's thinking it. And I still think it. Like I still walk into work and there's a developer that I work with where he lays out code and I'm absolutely flabbergasted. I'm just like, how did you think of that? And he's been doing it longer than I have. And he's at his 4-year mark, he was probably a better developer than me. And that's okay, because like not everyone is going to be like the 10x superstar developer. As long as you are enjoying it, you are being productive, you feel like you're learning day to day. And that's all you need out of a career. And that was kind of why what drew me to writing software was because like in finance, I just did the same thing all day, every day. I took the same phone calls. I argued with the same people. I did the same things over and over again. I wasn't building anything. I was just watching people basically blow up their financial lives on the stock market, because most people, like retail and investors, treat it like a casino. And like doing that for X amount of years, like it just slowly drove me nuts, and I got really bitter towards it. And now I get to go into work every day, have things that challenge the way I think about things. I'm always trying to find out something new. And I like the people that I work with, and it's collaborative instead of competitive. And I get the opportunity to actually physically build things. Like I build things, I write the code, and then I can hit a button and then I can watch it pop up on the screen and interact with it. Yeah, so no worries, Joshua. It does start at 6 p.m. Central. I don't know about CST versus CDT or which way the clocks are flipped right now. But yeah, if people need to drop early, if you show up late, like I said, all this will be recorded. You can catch up on your own time. You can reach out to me if you have questions about anything. But outside of that, like I keep a count just for my records of how many people showed up, but I don't keep individual attendance. Like there's no pass fail at the end of this based on your attendance. So you just come and go as you need to. So how does this all tie into the new DevOps course? So this is basically, it will tie into the DevOps course. You will work, I think the DevOps course is mostly going to be in Python. But this is kind of like what I covered is you will be using some of these same core principles with DevOps, and then you will go in a different direction. Like you will eventually work towards writing what's called infrastructure as code, learning how to provision. I think they're going to be working with AWS. So DevOps is basically a cross between a sysadmin, like someone that would usually would have historically worked with physical infrastructure, like racking servers and running network cables and setting up all of that physical equipment, and a software developer, because you're actually going to be writing code or basically working from a dashboard with a cloud provider, and you're going to be writing all of the commands, and again, I believe Code Platoon is going through infrastructure as code, so using something like Terraform, that will basically, you will write programs that you then upload to AWS, and that program tells AWS what physical and or virtual equipment to provision for your project. And so like the software development course is learning how to write a client-facing web application. The DevOps is going to be, how do you set up all of the infrastructure? And again, what would have normally been someone in a server room, like running wires and network cables and making servers are in working order, basically entering in all of the commands to have someone at AWS do that for you. Right, and that's how you host these web applications. I'm not sure how Code Platoon is going to handle it going forward. Previously, there was a website called Heroku, which was owned by Salesforce, which was kind of a wrapper or a layer on top of AWS that had a bunch of, basically it was AWS pre-configured so that you could quickly launch a web application. So like when I went through Code Platoon, I wrote a front end, a React JavaScript, and a back end in Django and Python. And I created 2 servers on Heroku. One server ran my front end, one server ran my back end. And that was all completely free. And it was like a really low powered server that would turn off if you didn't use it for 10 minutes. But as of November 28th, Heroku got rid of its free tier, which was why I was rewriting software for Code Platoon last night, like up till the deadline, to try and get it off the Heroku free tier. And there's competitors out there, and there'll be other ways that they address this, either through like an AWS credit or finding, I think like another website is fly.io, which will still have a free tier. But yeah, you'll learn how to do all of that. If you go to the software side of Code Platoon, if you go to the DevOps side of Code Platoon, you go more in depth into how do you provision and set up the actual servers and all of the other equipment like virtual private networks, load balancers, routers, all of these different things that are used to control web traffic for a web application. All right, so it is 7 o'clock, and as I said, tonight is mostly me talking, so I do apologize, but also appreciate everyone sticking with me. I'm going to take like a quick 5 or 6 minute break here. Before we do so, are there any questions on anything that I've covered up to this point? Okay, so real quick here, just scrolling up through the some of the questions. So for the application in if you in that PDF, and I don't know which session he will pop in, we have to work it out, but we will have Guillermo Aguilar stop in, and he's at DRW. He's another Code Platoon graduate. And DRW is a very, very large trading firm here in Chicago. He got there, he was placed there as an intern after Code Platoon as well. He is in charge of all of the pre-work. So basically, this is Intro to Coding Live. This helps you get on course to apply for Code Platoon. If you apply and get accepted, Guillermo is actually the one who grades all of the applications. I think he might have another helper, but 90% chance he's the guy who will do it. And then you're not done. You get accepted into Code Platoon. They have a structured pre-work that basically is helping you continue to develop so that you're ready for day one of the actual boot camp experience. And so he'll come in and he'll talk about application do's and don'ts, what the pre-work looks like. But for the questions for, it looks like Nola Moya asked about the ability to like use things. Yeah. So I can't remember the service that they use, but like when you're working on it, they can see if like you've navigated away from the screen. If you're just copying and pasting like large chunks of code into it, like it can flag you for cheating. So like it asks that you basically use the little search window through the application that the challenges are issued through. The one thing I will say is that like it says on there, like you cannot leave the problems. You can leave them and come back, like time limit is not held against you, but all of your challenges are stored as a cookie on there. So if you clear your cookies in between logins, you dump any progress you had on the challenges. So the big thing there is that they say, if you're going to like leave for the night or something like that, cut it out, drop it in a Word doc or a notepad or something like that, paste it in. They can see like actual little video clips of your session, so they can see you copying it out and pasting it back in and knowing that you're not just pulling it from somewhere else. So let's see here. So Leo, as far as the benefit of this course, I would say yes. If you want to look through the PDF and see like what we've got going today, like if you already understand all of it and you want to come back on Wednesday, you're more than welcome to do so. The first challenges that we'll run through are pretty simplistic, but like you can see like as you go down the REPLs, like they're going to get more and more challenging. And it's basically, this comes down to like the practice. So you have the ability to do some more REPLs, basically get some reps in, and also have the ability to ask any questions that you're running into as far as like challenges or maybe concepts that you're not 100% on. But again, it's up to you if you want to attend the class or not. So as far as like there is no time limits on the challenges. And the challenges that you're doing are different than the ones that I had to do, but definitely like towards the end, like some of the hard ones were like, again, brand new coder, like everything was self-taught at this point. They didn't have intro to coding when I applied. So I basically did everything on free code camp and like trying to figure out like, we're like borderline panic inducing. And I'm sure I spent at least that long on like the last challenge. And I know the last challenge for the Code Platoon application now is pretty tough. And again, I don't think anyone's gotten all the points on it yet out of all the applications that have been submitted. I haven't checked lately, but like you're not expected to get 100% on the application. You don't need to get 100% on the application to get accepted into the program. All right, so it is 7:03 p.m. Central Time, or 7:04. So let's go ahead and I'm going to take a break. We'll start class back up at 7:10 and we'll keep going here. All right, welcome back from the break. It is 7:12 p.m. Central Time. We're gonna go ahead and just keep going where we left off. So who will succeed? I mean, this isn't just for programming, it's for life, right? Like, don't make excuses, like to learn on your own, ask lots of questions, can-do attitude, persistence, resilient, humility, humbleness, high emotional EQ, takes advantage of resources, learns from other people's mistakes, will help you become a software developer, make your local high school football team, right? Like, that's what we're looking for. The don'ts, the excessive hand holding, copy paste code without taking time to understand why it works. This one is actually really important. Sometimes you will find the answer out there, and if you find someone else's answer out there and it works, take time to stop to understand why it works. See if you can pick through, kind of reverse engineer what they did, because basically you've got the answer right in front of you. Try and pick out the parts that you missed, why you didn't understand it right away. That's always a great learning opportunity. So it kind of ties back into this over here. Always complaining, mad at the world. I do that. I'm a successful software developer, so I don't take it or leave it. Wants the program to be done their way. This is also very true. Like, the computer doesn't care how you want it done. The computer wants instructions that it understands. So it's our job to figure out basically the computer is all of these things, right? Like, the computer doesn't care. The computer's angry. The computer wants things done in an exact specific way. And it's our job to basically leverage all of these things to figure out how we can do that to make the computer happy, because the computer is a big baby. So the prep schedule here, and like I said, I'll get all of this stuff updated. So we are going from November 28th until December 15th. And so that will be, that 15th is a Thursday. And I did not take any vacation this year for some reason. So I am off my day job starting December 16th, and I don't have to go back to work until like January 3rd. So if anyone's got any questions after class, let me know. I'll just be floating around with nothing to do for 2 weeks. In general, class goes from 6 to 9. I will typically hang out for a little while after to answer any questions anyone has. That is not mandatory. If we uncover any nuggets that I feel that are imperative that we cover the next session, after 9 p.m., I will always swing back around and cover them at the beginning of the next class. So don't feel like you have to hang out or you're missing something. But if you do have questions or you want to chat or anything like that, I'm usually available for however long we need to after class each night. 6 to 7 p.m. will be announcements, review the night's materials and strategies to solve problems. 7 to 9 p.m. We will work independently with a partner or as a group, all sorts of different ways, but we'll be working on the challenges and the REPLs that I passed out. So rules here. So I have not had any issues whatsoever, and I think this is my 5th or 6th time teaching this class, so let's keep the streak alive. The easy one is respect your fellow classmates and staff. No inappropriate jokes. right? Like if everyone's seen the bar chart of how funny your joke is, and basically as it goes up and to the right, it increases your likelihood of going to HR. We want to keep everything at the bottom. Like we don't want to go to HR here. This one is one that maybe is not as common, but no fake surprises. So there you will run into this in software development, and it is the practice of exposing your ignorance, right? Like you don't need to fake it till you make it. It's not, as humans, especially in the military, as we're wired. Like if you don't know the answer, you make it up, right? Like because presentation is 90% of everything. And so it takes work on all of our parts to kind of unprogram that, right? Like to raise your hand and say, I have no idea how to do that, or I have no idea what's going on here, especially as adults, or like people that you're highly highly skilled in one career and you're making the leap to something completely different. And so what we don't want to do in class is make that harder on people. So when someone exposes their ignorance or says like, hey, I don't know what's going on, like we don't need to be like, oh, I can't believe you didn't know that, or wow, you've never heard of that before. That's crazy, right? Like because you're not, it's not actively aggressive, but it's still it's little shots, right? Like it's like the little microaggressions or whatever, things that like, I mean, well, I didn't know it, right? Like I get surprised. So we want to encourage everyone to learn. We want to encourage everyone to ask questions. And this is huge. If you have a question, do not hesitate to ask the question, because there's 20 or 30 other people in this class, and at least one other person has that same question. So every question you're asking, I will do my best to answer it. Here, I guess the other thing we should put in the rules here is don't give the instructor too hard of a time, right? Like I will tell you right here, right now, I do not know the answer to every single question you're going to ask me. I will get some of these things wrong. Like I will be coding live in front of a studio audience here, and I will get flustered. Like I will forget my place. I will wonder why something isn't working when I know it should be working, right? And that is just kind of some of like the occupational hazards of like coding live in front of people and working without a tightrope. And it happens, right? I'm only human. And I'll tell you what, the first time I taught this class, and I was probably made it to like session 3 and like had done everything flawlessly. Everything did exactly what I said it was going to do for 2 whole days. And then that 3rd day, like towards the end of the day, and I ran into a challenge and I started writing and everything just went sideways on me. And I thought I was going to have to breathe into a paper bag, like to get it through the end of class, because it sucks. No one wants to feel dumb. No one wants to feel like an idiot. But now that I've done this 5 or 6 times and I've messed up in front of hundreds of brand new prospective coders out there, and I just learned to roll with the punches. And so I will screw things up. Absolutely. And if you see me doing something wrong, feel free to shout it out. I mean, save me, right? Like don't let me just flail around in front of the class, slowly dying inside. If you see what I did wrong, let me know. I'm all ears. It's collaborative. Yep. Yeah, you could definitely say that. The ability to basically be able to admit when you're wrong, is like the willingness to learn, the ability to work with people, and eventually there's going to be a tipping point in each situation where you're going to go from the person that doesn't know what's going on to now you're the person that knows what's going on, and being able to communicate that effectively without making those people feel worse about themselves is going to be hugely important, because you're going to be working with that same person maybe day in, day out for extended periods of time, maybe days, weeks, years, depending on what your career looks like. And everyone will get it wrong eventually. Let's see here. So we've got rules, and then is there anything else anyone else can think of or that they would want as far as like an agreement with the class to make them feel comfortable? So I'm always open to suggestions here. No cowboy fans. All right. Well, I don't know if I can do that for you. Yeah, I mean, it rolls up to like be a good person. So and like I said, I've had 0 issues in any class so far, so let's keep the streak alive. So what we're going to learn during this class: JavaScript. So it's the language of the web. The joke is everyone's first language. Java is not JavaScript, right? So Java is a completely different language. It is a strongly typed language, and JavaScript is a dynamic language. JavaScript definitely did name itself JavaScript to ride off the popularity of Java. They've admitted that, like, it's not a controversy, but they are 2 very different languages, and they're also used for very different things. If you're writing web applications, you're going to need JavaScript. So JavaScript fundamentals. So we're going to cover functions, conditionals, iterations, objects, and more, and how we start to work within these basic programming techniques. All right, so that was just kind of the intro, like all the housekeeping stuff. Excuse me. And now we're actually going to dive into starting to learn about software development here. Any questions on anything I've covered so far? All right, cool. So let's go ahead and keep moving forward. So what is a programming language? Lets us write lines of code to give the computer a set of instructions to perform, to produce some kind of output. And output is text to the screen, creation of a file, an animation, anything that you can really think of, in printing, sending a fax, all of those things are output. The computer will only perform exactly the instructions you have given it to perform. The computer doesn't improvise. If something's going wrong, it's almost always because you're doing something wrong. Every once in a while, it might be because there is some weird bug in the language itself and it needs to be addressed, or something's out of date, but odds are it's going to come down to either a syntax error, which will make your program crash, or when we start getting into conditional logic, that can get very confusing very quickly. And you just think you're telling the program to do one thing and you're actually telling it to do something else. It's probably the 2 most common things that are going to occur. All right, so at the very basic level here, we have values. Every value is a piece of data. Or data type, and that data type determines how that value behaves. Some values are numbers, so 86, 2021, 3.14. Some values are text, or what we'll refer to as a string. So you see the double quotes there. And some values are functions, and so on. So variables, this is what we use to store values. So variables are named label identifiers for storing values. So remember math class, X and Y were variables. By the way, X and Y are horrible computer programming variables, and we'll get into that. There are 3 ways to declare, create a variable in JavaScript. So the first one is var. This is the old way of doing it. If you look at examples, like if you're running into a problem, you say, how do I do this? And you pull it up in like a solution or a tutorial somewhere, you very well could run into the word var still, because and this is also important when you're looking at solutions. Sometimes how long ago they were posted can have an impact on whether or not you want to use that as your kind of like your source of truth for your program. With these beginning challenges, it's not as big of a deal, but when you start getting into more complex coding or using a framework, like I said, so the front end framework you'll learn to use almost every bootcamp will be React.js. And React.js being written in 2022 is extremely different than what was being written even in like 2018, 2019. And it would be almost incompatible with the stuff that was written in like 2014, 2015, I believe, when the framework first came out. So always checking how old your source is. But we will not use var in this class. There's really no reason to use it. There's let and const now. And so let is a variable that can be reassigned, but not redeclared. And const cannot be reassigned and not accessible before it appears within the code. So var, let, and const are reserved keywords in JavaScript. You can't use them for anything other than declaring variables. And here's an example. So again, this is the old style. Var x equals hello world. Let current year equal 2021. Const earth gravity equals 9.807. All right, so let, const, and var are keywords that let you initially declare named variables. Current year, so basically what we're calling the variable, is the name of it. You must also give variables a name. Names cannot begin with a number, but they can have it after the first character. This is our value assigned to the variable. Its type will be a number. All right, so let me just do this here real quick. Now, also, whenever I create a REPL or, oh boy, they changed Replit since the last time I taught this class. So hopefully it doesn't beat me up too bad. All right. So this is Replit. This is basically a virtual IDE. So this is something, and it's all being provisioned by a server. Like you're getting a little bit of memory here. And you can see my CPU usage, my RAM, storage, all this stuff. And it's basically just a virtual IDE that I can use to write code in. It gives me a console and a shell. So it's just like a little form here, but we're going to write code in here throughout class. And this is basically a lightweight version of this. So day to day, I'm using Visual Studio Code. And so like this is some Python code. And this is actually the code that I was working on the other night for Code Platoon. So this will look different than JavaScript, but this is basically like, this is kind of like using the website version of Zoom. This is like having the Zoom application on your desktop. And we will use this for the bulk of class, depending on everyone's comfort level. Maybe for like session 8 and session 9, I will switch over to this. You will not use Replit at all in Code Platoon. So use it as kind of like training wheels. It's good to get familiar with it. It's smaller. There's less things to worry about. but the sooner you can transition yourself over to VS Code, the better off you will be. So we'll talk more about VS Code later, but there's other tools out there. Like if you're going to write Java, you're going to use most likely use IntelliJ, which is a JetBrains product, which is an IDE. Specifically, all you do is write Java in it. With VS Code, it's kind of VS Code is owned by Microsoft, and it's what's called a lightweight IDE that basically you can augment it with plugins so that you can use it to write multiple different languages all within the same piece of software, right? And so work with Python in here, and work with JavaScript and React. So HashiCorp, so this is Terraform. That was for our aspiring DevOps people. This is how you write infrastructure as code. TypeScript, some Python plugins for data science, PowerShell. If we've got some people on Windows computers and I have to read some of their PowerShell scripts that they write on their PCs, more Python plugins, some Ruby plugins, so some CSS plugins, all of this all within one spot. So like these are Python. Like I can come in here in the same folder, I can open up a JavaScript file, I can open up a Ruby file, and I can start writing code. So, and it's smart based on the extension that I give my code. JetBrains is great, but JetBrains costs money. And so like if you want to pay for it, and continue to learn on, it's great. It's very powerful. And a lot of the features carry over between their different versions of software. But again, it's cost money and I'm cheap. And so I just write it in VS Code. IntelliJ isn't for Python. So JetBrains is the company, and a lot of people just call it IntelliJ. IntelliJ is specifically their IDE for Java and any Java-based languages like Clojure or Kotlin, all of what they call JVM languages. I think Scala is one of them. Python, it has its own product. PyCharm is and so basically like what VS Code is like kind of a basic editor that you can use plugins to customize whatever languages you're using or bring in additional functionality for each language you want to use in it. JetBrains, so think of that as kind of like Google and Android, where they kind of let you play around with things, modify things as you need to. JetBrains is like the Apple of IDE. It's completely vertical integrated. Everything is proprietary. They do have a marketplace where people can build plugins and sell them, but each one of their IDEs is specifically tailored to a language or a set of languages, and they're very powerful. But like if you buy RubyMine, you're not going to write Python in it. Then you need to go out and buy PyCharm. And if you want to write Java, then you need to buy IntelliJ, and they have packages and everything like that. But each one of these is set to basically develop a specific language. So the question is, if you either the remote or in person, you have to buy a Mac. They used to be stricter about that. Like I had to buy a Mac. I had never used a Mac in my entire life until I went to Code Platoon, and now I'm just on a Mac because that's what I need for my day job. And the only thing I would do on my PC is play games, and I haven't updated it since like I became a developer 5 years ago. So I've got an old beat up HP laptop that I can still play some games on. I will say, having gone back, and why people like writing code on Mac is because up until very recently, Mac had the Linux kernel native on it. So you could write in Bash. It was very easy to bridge back and forth between like writing software on a Linux machine and a Mac machine. And if you want to do it in Windows, you have to do PowerShell, and they push you towards, like, if you're going to write on a PC, like that's like if you're going to write C# anywhere in the .NET .ASP framework, like all of that is by Windows, for Windows, done on like a Windows PC. All of the open source software was kind of slanted towards Mac. Like, it is much easier to get like Ruby or Python up and running on a Mac than it is on a PC. So they don't make it mandatory that you buy a PC anymore, but they basically don't guarantee you any tech support while you're going through Code Platoon, because all of the instructors will be on a Mac. That being said, there's enough people that have gone through Code Platoon on PCs now that you probably have support from like some graduates and other students and some of the TAs that have shown interest in getting PCs tuned up so that you can write software on them. All right. So real quick here, we'll hop back into here. This is so this is doing two things right here, right? So this is creating or instantiating my variable. This is assigning my variable a value, right? And so we can do two things at once. So I can say let name, right? So that is right. So all right. So this double slash, notice how the text is green. This is called writing a comment. So this code is not recognized by the program. So nothing happens when I write a comment. Right. And for you Mac users, it's command // and for all my PC people out there, it should be control / when you're in the replet. And you can just write 2 // or you can use that as a shortcut. The nice thing with that is with the shortcut is I can highlight multiple lines and then hit control or command / and it'll get all of those lines at the same time. All right, so this is declaring my variable. This is your console over here. If I want, so if I hit run, my program ran, but I didn't tell it to do anything. Right. So if I come in here and say console.log, and notice how when I do this, right, so they made this a lot nicer. So console, and then if I hold my mouse over it here, we see that the console module provides a simple debugging console that is similar to the JavaScript console mechanism provided by web browsers. Module exports 2 specific components, blah, blah, blah. And you can see like there's a scroll bar, like there's a lot in here, right? This is, if you're not sure how something works, there's always inline documentation, which is very nice. This is honestly, since they've upgraded their workspace since the last time I taught this in August, like this is a huge leap forward. We're going to do console.log. And so again, we see the same thing here. We get a little blurb about what's expected. So we're good there. I'm going to put parentheses. So prints to standard out with new line. Multiple arguments can be passed. So I can do hello. And now when I run it, so I'm sending the word hello, the string hello, to my console. Now, with that, I can also send my variable. Now I've declared my variable. Does anyone want to take a guess at what's going to happen when I console.log my variable with no value? Sorry, what was that? Unknown. So we're undefined.
No,
Nope, not null. Null is something that is specifically empty. Undefined is something that has not been assigned a value yet. Right? So I have created my variable, I've declared it, but I have not assigned a value. So the value of my variable name is undefined. Now, if I come down here and do the same thing a second time, after I've assigned it a variable, I get Charles, right? And so I can do something like this. First time I run console.log. Right? So I get undefined, I assign it, I get Charles. Now I can comment this out and I can comment this out and I can uncomment this. So watch this. What do we see here? What happened? I got this red squiggly line. So it's going to tell me what's going wrong. Cannot redeclare block scoped variable name, right? So let, similar to console, is a variable that can be reassigned but not redeclared. So we cannot redeclare let. So I cannot use the same variable name twice in a row. So let me go ahead and comment this out. And now if I run this down here, oops, connects name before initialization. Why is it yelling at me for that? Oh, sorry, it's yelling at me for this one. Okay, so I had to think about that for a second, but because I put name down here instead of up here, it's trying to console.log name, and it doesn't exist in the program yet. So cannot access name before initialization. So this is me initializing it on line 10, but I'm asking for it on line 3. Now it says, like, it gives me some stuff that like home run or whatever. This is because like I'm in their virtual environment. Sorry, what did I do here? Get the console back. Oh boy. Bad mouse click. There we go. So, but right here in my error, it's telling me name, and then it's this little thing is kind of in the way here. There we go. So, but we see index.js :3:49. So it's telling me inside index.js on line 3 at the 49th character, which I'm guessing is right here. It's telling me this is where I messed up, right? So reading error messages is going to become a huge part of what we do as software developers, because we're going to try some code that we think that works. And if it doesn't work, if you don't read the error message, you're just blindly trying to figure out what's going on. But we can always stop and read the error message, and it's a guide to help us figure out where things might be going wrong. It may not always give us the best answer, and some error messages can be confusing, But with a lot of this is telling me, hey, look at line 3, you screwed up, right? So if I comment this out, second time I run console.log, I get Charles, right? So this all in one line is the same as doing these 2 steps. Now, anyone want to take a stab at how I would change this to Dave?
Just change the declaration from Charles to Dave, right?
Yeah, how, so what would I type?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I will say retype let name equals Dave.
Very close. So remember, we can't type let name a second time because it'll blow up because we can't redeclare it. But what we can type is name a second time. Right. And so let cannot be redeclared, but it can be reassigned. So now I am declaring let, I'm assigning it the value of Charles on line 10, then in line 12, I am reassigning name the value of Dave. So when I run the console.log down here, I should just see Dave. All right, so there's Dave. And if I pop console.log up here as well, we'll see Charles, then we'll see Dave. Right, everything happens in order from top to bottom. It reads each line, the specific instructions we give it. Now, this is let can be reassigned, but it cannot be redeclared. Now, we'll cover more about scope later. All right, now with this, let's go and see. So again, we get that little red error message is trying to warn me. So let's say let day, and we'll change this to const. Say Monday. Right, and so I'll just comment these out here real quick. All right, so I am taking the variable day, I'm initializing it, I'm assigning it the value of Monday, and then I'm console.logging my variable. I see Monday. Now let, I could reassign. Now if I say day equals Tuesday, watch what happens. It's not throwing the error up. Oh, it should throw it when I run it. Okay, so we didn't get the little red line under here, but assignment to constant variable. So with a const or a constant cannot be reassigned, cannot be redeclared, right? So we'll comment that out. So we're back to running. All right, we'll put these guys back in play here. So that's all good. All right, so this is, we're getting into like our first basic building block here. All right, so we're, again, just ignore, like you'll see var, know that it's an old version of these two, but we're not going to use it when we write programs. We're going to use letter const. Let is basically how we basically let the computer know we're about to create a variable. We're going to name our variable, then we're going to assign it a value. If we don't assign it a value, it is undefined. All right, so we talked about the console.log method, returns undefined. All right, data types. So basic data types are numbers. So let age equal 34. And actually, I apologize. Before we break into this, any questions, and feel free to throw them out. And Efren, no, you can reassign let as many times as you want to. You can just never redeclare it. So I could say name equals Dave, name equals Chester, right? Like, and keep going and keep going and keep going. So you can reassign as many times as you want to. But so like there's no cap on that. You just can't do this more than once. Any other questions on this? Or on the value or variables? Okay, so excuse me. So numbers, strings, these two things are identical. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you use double quotes or single quotes. Whatever you use to start, you have to use the same thing to finish. So you can't start with a double quote and with a single quote. Once, like, and the like Replit isn't going to correct you, I believe, unless they updated that as well. So if I save this, yeah, so it didn't do anything. Like, it doesn't care. And also, I don't know if anyone noticed it, like, so like when I had this up here, notice I missed a space here. And the program still read it, right? Like, we don't do this for the computer, right? Like, we can type just like this, but it's not easily readable for humans. So when we clean up our code, we want to make sure that we have proper spacing. And if you miss anything, or if you're not sure what to do, this button up here, format code, if you click it, it will fix it, basically a bunch of the common errors for you. And so whenever you type some code, if things are looking a little messy or whatever, you can always come back here. You can click that button and it'll clean it up for you. And it doesn't catch everything. But so again, double quotes. And so another comment here is if you do one slash and an asterisk, and I don't know that there's a shortcut for this. This is a multi-line comment. So everything between those is a comment. Versus when you just do this, you hit enter, you go to the next line, you're back out of your comment already. All right, so single quotes and double quotes are the same thing. It's a matter of style, but back ticks are different. Okay, and what I mean by that is, so this third one is backticks. And this is how we build what's called a string literal, and we'll cover more of that as well. But when you use quotes, so if I say, oops, but quotes equal hello, and then plus name, right? So, and then we do console.log quotes. When we run this, oops, for initialization, because I'm that uncommented again. We'll get a bunch of stuff, but we're looking at that last line. So the last name I assigned to name was Chester. And so it says, hello, Chester. Now, this is string interpolation. So we're adding, or string concatenation. We're adding things together. So I left that space there at the end, so it looks like it's there. If you do backticks, you can actually do it in line. Right, and so especially if, let's say, we were designing like a Mad Lib game application or program, if everyone remembers Mad Libs, but you tell a story and we have to pick like 30 words out, we can cut a lot of extra pluses and spaces out by using the string interpolation, and we can just write like we normally would within a sentence. And if we console.log backticks, right, we get the exact same thing. So this is two ways to do the exact same thing, and it's just a matter of style. Okay. So next data type is Booleans. So that is a true or false value. So true and false is protected. So I don't know which one is most widely preferred. The project that I work on in my personal preference is we will try and use backticks and do string interpolation, or basically create a string literal whenever we get the chance. And the reason being is because, like, if you do it this way, you have to remember to put like these extra spaces in and everything, and you're, I mean, adding in quite a few extra characters, right? So like, right, verse, like I can just do, right? So as you have to plug in more things, it becomes easier and easier to do it this way. And if we run this again, we should get the same thing for both of them again, right? And so notice how I just grabbed that day variable, and yeah, notice how like I didn't type in Monday, right? Like I could have written all of this in quotes, but if I've got a system that has 15 users in it, I would have to write the same line of code for each of the users with their name hard coded in it. Then I would have to write in one for each day of the week. So now for 15 users, right, over 5 days of the week, depending on what day they log in, I'm up to, was that 75 lines of code, or I could do it in one line of code by drawing on the variables and making my text dynamic. Cool. And let's see here. So Booleans, true or false values. So we are like, I don't say we, I am not Replit, but your IDE, and so you can write JavaScript code in like Notepad if you want to, right? Like you don't get all the syntax highlighting, you don't get all these things that are trying to make your life better. You just get black and white text, and that's it. Like you don't get any error handling, you don't get any warnings. Everything in here is trying to help you out, right? So notice how let is a different color. So my variable type is a different color than the name of my variable. My string is a different color than my variable name. When I'm adding in math operators, it's blue. The variable name shows up white here, right? Like, so all of these color codings are here to help you out. So so look what happened once I typed true, right? So it's white, it's doing its thing. Like it even says, like right there, you see true pop up, and it didn't pop up. Let's see if we get it on false. So you can see like we've got fail assert, that's going to be a function, and you've got false, and you see that little key next to it. That means that it is locked, that it has a specific meaning within JavaScript. And we also see that it is basically like changing color, right? So that's telling us there's something special when we type in true or false there. And that's a Boolean value. Undefined, we already discussed how that comes about. And then null, again, which was a great guess, but it is different than undefined. So undefined is something that's never had a value assigned to it. Null is something that has been specifically assigned no value or isn't there, right? So when we start to return things, like if we don't return anything, like we will be returning null. Or that like we can assign things a specific value of null, which means it's completely empty. So it has a value of null. All right. So arrays is another data type. So if anyone has seen this stuff yet, so again, we're declaring a variable. It's going to be a let. So that means we can reassign the value later if we want to. We're going to call it tech companies. And then we're going to load in several variables into here. Or I'm sorry, several values into our variable. So let's go ahead and grab this. Oops. Oh, so it's mad at me because of the quotes. So this is another shortcut. I don't know if people notice that. So usually when you're in a just like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, if you highlight something and you hit a character, you replace whatever you've highlighted. In an IDE, Replit included, if you are using a wrapping character, so quotes or a parenthesis or square brackets or curly braces, those are all wrapping characters, and it will actually wrap. It's smart enough to wrap whatever you highlighted. So that's a nice shortcut. So I can delete this first one, grab the whole thing, hit my double quotes, and now I've got it. All right. So an array, if I send my array to the console to take a look at it, and call it techcos. Right, so there is my array. Now, if I want to look at one part of my array, I am going to give it an index value. All right, humans start counting at 1, computers start counting at 0. Humans start counting at 1, computers start counting at 0. I'm saying it twice. You will hear it over and over again, and it will be the bane of your existence for like your first 6 months of learning how to write software. If we take a look at this here, Apple is at the 0, Facebook is at the 1, Microsoft is at the 2, and Google is at the third. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 0 through 3. So if I want to see Apple, I give it a box or the square brackets. So this is called box notation. And I throw the 0 in there. So instead of seeing the whole array and all of the values, I now just see the first value, right? And when we say JavaScript is a dynamic language, like this is an array. I now have 4 strings in my array. I can say true. I can say 23. I can say unvariable. I can say a decimal, right? And all of those things are inside my array still. Right? And if I were like, if I was in Java, I cannot, like, I basically have to say what is going to be in my array. Is it going to be an array of strings? Is it going to be an array of numbers? Are there going to be multiple things in the array? And I have to write some extra code for it to accept that. But with JavaScript, it does not care what's inside my array, as long as it's formatted correctly. And then beyond that, I can use things like these pre-built-in methods to add things and take things away from my array, and also find out some things about my array. So remember, we said 0, 1, 2, 3, there's 4 elements in my array. All right, so I can say techcos.length. I'm probably gonna need it. And it tells me that the length of techcos is 4 elements long. Right? So all of these different things are pre-built-in methods into the language to help me get information out of there. And I'm breezing through this stuff because we're going to have like a whole section on arrays and built-in methods. So some of the stuff where maybe it feels like I'm breezing through it, like we will be spending more time on it in upcoming lessons. All right. Excuse me. Lastly, are objects. And these are some of the more, this is probably one of the more difficult concepts to grasp in JavaScript. And objects are, I mean, it's like a dictionary in Python, I think. And it's a hash in Ruby, like different languages call it different things, but pretty much every language has a data structure just like this. And so object is a structure of data that can contain many values using a comma separated key value pair. Think of a dictionary. No, keys are unique inside the braces. There can only be one of each key. So let's go ahead and take a look at building on our first object. So Joshua, does the zero-based indexing restart when you change the data type? I'm not sure I understand that question. Every array, basically, an array can only be an array. Like I cannot change, like I cannot reassign an array to an object. I can reassign it to something different, but the
To kind of explain my question really quick.
Go ahead.
So when you added to the after Google, you added name, you added a couple numbers. Yeah, so would name be 4 and 50 be 5? Like would it just continue?
Yeah, it just keeps going.
Okay, yeah, that was my question because I wasn't sure when you stopped doing, like if that was just counting the strings or if that was counting every piece of data in that array.
Nope. So it just keeps going. So like this would be 4, this would be 5, this would be 6. So 0 through 6, I now have 7 elements in here. So if I run this again, my count should bump from 4 to 7.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Cool. And then Cassandra, in certain languages, an array can only be one data type. In JavaScript, the array is its own data type, but that array can contain anything you want to hold in it. So like,
Got it.
and past that, like we can also throw in a new array And
So like,
we can even throw an object in here.
oh, wow. So like nested within the array?
Yep. And
Awesome.
and beyond that, we can even inside of our object put right. So like this is where data starts getting complicated.
Mhm.
Is that, and this is at this point, let's see if it gives me some better formatting. Not much. So this is a string, a string, a string, a string, a variable which resolves to a string, the number 50, the Boolean value true, an array of numbers, an object with a string and another array in the object as values, right? All inside my array. And then I could take this entire thing and wrap it inside another object. So like this is called nested data,
Mhm.
right? And has anyone in class heard of JSON before?
Yes,
Right.
with
So,
Azure.
yep. So JSON is JavaScript object notation, if my memory serves, and it is not the only standard, but it is by far the most common standard of transmitting data through the internet, through web applications. And it is basically going to be all in arrays and objects. So your standard JSON, and here, let's see, let me pull this up here real quick. Let's see here, free JSON API. Looks like I've been here before. So, right, this is a object, right? This is a comma separated value or list of key value pairs. The key of user ID with the value of 1, the key or key of ID with the value of 1, the key of title with the value of some fake Latin, and then the key of completed with a Boolean value of false, right? And so here's some different APIs that you can play with for free and basically like hang it with your web application to retrieve data. If we do this, so I have a plugin in Chrome that automatically formats JSON for me. Everyone can see this. I know it's kind of dark green on black, but right here, we see the square bracket, right? That means we're inside of an array, right? And inside of that array is an object, right? And so this is an array with 100 objects in it. Each one of these objects is basically formatted the same: user ID, ID, title, body, right? And each one's going to have a unique ID, right? 2, 3, 4, and we'll go all the way up to 100. But this is a basic array of objects. And so, for instance, like when I'm working with software that we're tracking recruit information, well, we'll have an object that represents all of the recruits, or an array of all of the recruits that are coming in that day. And then we compartmentalize the information. So within here, we may have an applicant, first name, last name, middle name, and then inside of an array in here, we'll have all of their scheduled visits coming up in the future. And then in a different object, we'll have like test scores, and it'll have all of their ASVAB scores in there. And all of that information is stored in a database somewhere, and it's returned to us via JSON. And then our program goes through these, parses it, and then pulls it up and basically presents it in a pretty format that we're used to seeing when we look at things on the front end. Like this starchy opulent DOS is, this information is saved in a database somewhere in text just like this. And when I load up this page, their backend web server says, what's the title of this? And please display the title here, formatted in this manner with this icon next to it for this username. And these are all values stored somewhere. and then it's presented to me in a polished package, right? And that's an example of basically what we're striving towards, is that a front end, basically client interface interacting with a database on the back end of stored information. All right, so with an object, so let's go ahead and say, let instructor, now we'll create our object. And so an object is going to have curly braces, and it's going to be, and we'll do this here. We'll call instructor 1. And so we'll say name is Charles. Right, and so right here again, made a small error. Notice how this lights up red, expected comma. These are comma separated values. So here's where the error pops up. So I go back, there's where I'm missing my comma. Right, and so now same thing here. If I do console.log instructor 1 and I run it, here is my object, right? So first name Charles, last name Kubiak, email is charles@codeplatoon.org, has pets, true, pet names, 3 cats, Todd, Mo, and Nugget, right? So notice how true is a different color. Notice how this number was a different color, right? So strings come through as white. Some of these protected values are different types. Again, it's just the computer trying to make it easier for you. Now, when we looked at an array, and I wanted to see so if I do instructor 1, I get my entire object. Anyone want to take a stab at how I would see just my first name? Yep, so bracket notation again. What do I put in my bracket? Yep, first name. So we're gonna put it in as a string here. Right, and now I just see Charles. Right, and if I want to see just my last name, right, there's my last name. Now, this, if anyone's noticed, this is camel case. This is how we write JavaScript. The leading letter, the first variable will be all, or the first word will always be all lowercase. Each word after that will start with an uppercase letter. Yeah, and Leo, that's what I'm going to talk about next. We're going to get to dot notation. And I'm also going to talk about some of the pitfalls there, right? So notice how this isn't specifically a string, right? So there's no quotes around this. So I don't remember if this will work or not. I don't think it will. All right, so reference error, last name is not defined because it's thinking it's a variable. So we'll keep that there. Now, with that, if I do this, notice how this creates an error. But let's say if I wanted things to be print ready. Right, so now I can do this. So I've got a space in there. It's a little bit more readable. right? I'm still getting my last name. Now with dot notation, notice how this is blowing up, right? And so I can go back to this. And I have to change this back as well, right? And I can run dot notation. Oops. Kubiak. What did I, oh, because I've still got a quote here. And I still have a bracket down here. Right, so there's my last name. But again, it forces you into this variable name convention or this key name convention. And so I typically will do this just because you can't go wrong with it. Like it will always work. And so dot notation, and especially I control this. And so like I can change these names, but if I'm working with something, right? So like if I'm working with this JSON API, and let's say it doesn't have like it has user ID as 2 words and quotes, I can't use dot notation. I can't control it. I have to use how they're using it. No, run is your syntax checker for the most part. I mean, excuse me. Like it will, I mean, try and warn you, like, I mean, there's no closing quote here. But it doesn't give it to me until I actually hit the button. Like, so sometimes you may get an error, sometimes you might not. Like now it's giving me this saying, hey, where's your closing square bracket? But this right here doesn't cost any money to press, right? So sometimes, and it's not a new developer thing, an old developer thing, it's just we write code, we get in the flow, and it's like, oh, one more line, and next thing you know, you've written like 5, 10, 15 lines of code, or you've gotten your application to do 3 or 4 things and take 3 or 4 different steps, and you hit run and it doesn't work.
Yep.
And now you don't know where it's broken, per se, like where
Right.
you're wrong. So this is free to use. Smash that thing like you're liking and subscribing to a YouTube video. Like just run. You type a line of code, hit run, you do the next thing, you hit run. And you will see me do that when I develop in front of the class, and you will also see me get ahead of myself sometimes, where maybe I do 2 or 3 different things. But especially as you're getting the hang of things, do something, hit the run button and see if it really does what you think it's doing, like one step at a time. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at kind of like what the power of this will be. So I can say, I just said I use bracket notation, and here I go jumping straight into dot notation here. But just know that they both do, it's 2 ways to do the same thing again. And I'm not going to clean this up. Well, I guess I can a little bit here. So watch this. So what did I do wrong here? Um, I did something bad. That made it go away. No, no. Well, let's run it and see what we get. So
It's the curly brace.
where did I miss it? Right there, right at the end, right in front of me, right? Thank you very much. All right, so hi, my name is Charles Kubiak. You can reach me at charles@codeplatoon.org. It is true that I have 3 cats. Their names are Todd. And let's do this a little cleaner. Right, and so this is basic, and this is still almost to the point of hard coding. So my next step in this would be, is let's say that I had an array, right? So let instructors an array, and then basically had like find it.
You still misspelled instructor.
Oh yeah. There we go. And so now I have an array of multiple instructors. I could write a little program that goes through and feeds each of their information through this and then prints it out. So it could say, hi, my name is Charles Kubiak. Adam Kahan is the full-time day, like the full-time day instructor. So we could do it with him and like each of his pets if he has a pet name, right? So like, but this is how almost all the data that we'll interact with will be stored eventually. And so again, like this is how we reach into it. We can store different values in there, right? So we've got some strings, we've got true, we've got the like I have pet names as an array. I could do siblings and do this as an object. And so we could say name, Ken, relationship, brother, right? And so, and we could even then move this into an array, and we could say name Kim, relationship, sister, There we go. So we format, right? And so this is still an object, string, Boolean, array of strings, array of objects that have some string values in them, right? And so like we're nesting data inside of other data structures. And don't worry, the first challenges that we have won't deal with stuff like this, but as we work towards the back, like we're going to figure out how we can work with these different data structures toward some of the more complex challenges. All right, operators, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Any questions so far as anything that we've covered? And I know there's lots of questions. Don't worry about asking them. Also, if you're hesitant to ask them, you can always catch me afterwards. You can always reach out to me directly. I can always bring it up anonymously in the next class. So yes, so because I have hard coded. So the question is, does a true value always give it is true I have? So yes, because I have hard coded it. And basically this is just me just kind of showing some basics of this. Like if I were doing this, like I would start using some more building blocks. Like we're going to talk about conditional logic, where if someone does have a pet, it would say that instead of just saying it is true that I have 3 cats or whatever, I would say like it is true, and then or say if true, say that I have pets. If it isn't true, then just say that I don't have any pets, but then don't display all of this stuff, right? Like we will, like this is all static, this is non-changing data unless I change it up here. We're going to learn how to start making this stuff responsive. And then how come for the data types we use this? So this, because this is telling us that this is a variable that is being assigned a value, and this is a key value pair, right? So we use the equal up here to say that this variable instructor1 is equal to this entire thing, right? And just like, I mean, it's just the way the language is written. So like if I do this, like it's going to yell at me and say, did you mean to use a colon? And equal can only follow a property name when the containing object literal is part of a destructuring pattern, right? And this is a destructuring pattern up here. So like it's going to warn us, and why they did it this way versus using all equals, my guess is it's just more readable this way, but I don't know why they wrote the language specifically that way. Okay, so great question. When objects are nested in arrays, such as basically how I have it here, how do we access them? So the same way I did right here, right? So so pet names is an array nested inside of instructor. So the name of my array is pet names. The 0 value, right? So the 0 index, the first name in there is going to be inside the object instructor, and then inside pet names, and it's at the 0 index position, right? And so that's why we see their names are Todd, right? And then Mo is the second name in there, or in the 1 index position. So the 1 index position gives me Mo, and then in the 3rd index position, which is 2, we get Nugget. And so, and it's the same thing here, right? So like if I want to see one of my siblings' names, so I can say console.log, right? And we'll just do this way. So we'll do console.log, and we'll say instructors, or I'm sorry, instructor1. All right, so when I All right, so there's instructor 1. Let's see what this looks like. I'm gonna print this out. I don't want to do that because it takes it to the object. So, because I'm trying to concatenate instead of just listing it separate. Let's see what we get when we do this. All right, so instructor 1. All right, and so the same thing here. Dot siblings. All right, so now we see this. All right, so now we're to an array. So we'll look at Kim. So that's using the index of 0 in this array. All right, so now we just see the first object. So the first value in this array is just this object. Right, and then if we want to see just the name, right? And so now we've drilled all the way down. And also, to be fair, and just because I had said it, like we can also do right, so this is, these two things are the exact same thing. So this is using dot notation, and this is using full bracket notation. All right, so notice how we get to the same thing here. Right, and so these two things do the exact same thing. It's just different ways of writing the same thing. All right, any other questions and objects and arrays? And again, even if you're not ready to ask your question yet, like this is not the last you've seen of objects and nested data. It's going to be a reoccurring theme here. You'll have lots of time in the future to ask the questions as well. How are we feeling? Mind's blown. Happy to be here.
I feel like the hardest part is, missing those little things as far as the syntax goes and getting lost in the code as you're going.
Yep, and that's super legit, and it's very easy to do. And like the way to avoid it, like I said, is to keep hitting that run key. Like, and if we noticed earlier, but like I had 2 errors. I fixed one, I hit the run button. I had a second error because I didn't see it because I wasn't looking at that part of the screen. But fixing things and writing software, getting a new error message is just as exciting as the code working. Right. So because like when you get a new error message, that means you've moved yourself closer to your goal. And I've definitely been more excited for new error messages than I've been excited when the code actually works. Like getting past something that's just like eating your brain, and then getting a new error message because you finally figured out a part of the problem is always like something to get hyped up over. All right, So we have operators, functions, control flow, iteration, built-in methods, problem solving. All right, so we should be able to get through operators and possibly start talking about functions. And then whatever we don't get to, we'll start that at the beginning of session 2, because session 2 is just talking about the REPL and how to format code. And that's the only thing I have to talk about. And we've pretty much covered all of that by doing tonight. So again, we're not these first 2 days, or this first day kind of blends into the first 2 days. And instead of probably like 45 minutes or an hour of talking tomorrow, depending on how much questions everyone has, and then we'll by 7 p.m. tomorrow, or I'm sorry, not tomorrow, Wednesday, we'll start diving into the actual challenges. All right. So operators. So assignment operator, we've already covered this. So this is assigning a value, right? So let A is declaring a variable, instantiating a variable, initializing a variable, however you want to say it. Equals 5 is assigning the value to that variable, right? And so you will use this one fairly often in your own code. You use it all the time. It is for assigning a variable, easily confused with comparator operators. So equal does not do the same thing as double equal or triple equal. And we'll cover that here in this section. All right, so addition is addition, subtraction is subtraction, multiplication is the single asterisk. Exponent is probably, instead of using a 10, you use double asterisks. Division is division. So this was before I mean, for forever was just labeled modulus. JavaScript does not have a true modulus operator. It has a remainder operator. But if someone says use the modulus, it's this thing, it's basically the percent symbol, or modulo. And what it does is returns the remainder. So 10 divided by 3, 3 goes into 10 3 times, that's 9. There's 1 left over, the remainder is 1. So 10 remainder 3, or 10 modulo 3, or 10 modulus 3 will give you 1. So if you say any of those, I'll understand what you're talking about. And so like if we did 10 remainder 4, right, 4 times 2 is 8, that's goes in twice whole, and 10 minus 8 is 2, so the remainder would be 2. And if we did like 10 remainder 2 goes in 5 times even, the remainder would be 0, right? And so that's all this mathematical operator does. And those are all arithmetic operators. The second part, and these are some of these will be familiar, some of them will be a little bit newer. So these are logic operators. Now, double equals and triple equals are basically equal and strictly equal. And so let me show you what that means here real quick. All right, so if I say let A equal 9 and let B equal the string of 9, and let's console.log A double equals B. Right, we get true down here because all it's looking at is the value. Now, if I make this triple equals, we get false because now it's looking at the value and the type. All right, and let's see, I forget JavaScript. Yeah, so it's just type of. Okay, so if we do Oh, there we go. Right, so A is a number, B is a string. Now they're both 9. So when we just do equals, that's going to be true. But when we do strictly equals, it's checking the value, but then it is also checking the type, and the type is not true. It is not the same. So if I make these both 9, the strictly equal will go back to true. And that's the difference between the two. And in when we're doing comparisons, we will always default to the stricter comparison, right? Like, because we always want to be as restrictive as possible and as controlling of our data as possible. Now, there may be instances specifically where we don't want to use strictly equal, like if, again, we're working with a data source that we don't control, and we're told beforehand that like numbers or strings of numbers could be coming in, then maybe we don't want to have that strict equal. But when we're writing programs, we always want to be as strict as possible. All right. And then, so not equal and strict not equal, this exclamation point and in JavaScript and generally in programming is called a bang operator. And so if anyone ever says like, give me a bang equal, that means exclamation point equal, and it means it is not equal. And this is strictly not equal. So, and then it's no, it didn't pop up, but there's a meme out there that says bang equal, bang equals false. It's funny because it's true. And it's basically because when you put a bang operator in front of something, it gives you the inverse. So false. So if you ever see something with a bang operator in front of it, is giving you the opposite of that value. All right. Greater than, we're used to that. Less than, we're used to that. Greater than or equal. So again, it's just the greater than symbol. Like if we were drawing it freehand, you put the underline, but with using keyboard keys, it's just the symbol and then the equal sign. And for and or, these are the ones that get a little bit tricky. So an and is a double ampersand, and or is, these are called this is the one single character is called a pipe. So double pipes is an or. And what this is saying is that both the values on either side of this have to be true for this to be true. This is saying either this value has to be true or this value has to be true, right? True and true, true or true, right? So if we look at these examples, let's do this. So we'll say, right, so 4 is greater than 2, that resolves to true. 2 is less than 8, that resolves to true. True and true, right? So there's our true. Down here is 4 greater than 8, that is false. Is 4 greater than 2, that is true. Because one of these values is false, the whole thing resolves to false, right? Now, same things down here. True and true is true. False and true will still give you a true. And this is very easy to break your program here when you use the and or when you should have been using the other one. Common, it happens. And just like we nest data, we also end up nesting our logic. And when we start dealing with nested logic, it can get tricky. All right. So I'm going to end it. Well, so I'm going to go over this, but we are going to cover this first thing on Wednesday, because this is going to be a little like, this is going to be the toughest thing we've worked with so far tonight. So this last, and I get, sorry, keep jumping in front of myself. I've had like 2 cups of coffee to stay up this late tonight after coming off a 4-day weekend. Any questions on operators or anything else that we've gone through so far?
Is this available to us, this PowerPoint?
Yes. Well, I dropped the slides in.
Okay,
And also, I will probably go in and delete those here. I need to, normally I just have to update a couple of dates, but they renamed, this used to be called like Bootcamp Prep or whatever, and they renamed it to Intro to Coding Live. So I have to go through in like 30 different spots and delete Prep and put Intro to Coding Live. And then when I'm done with that tonight, I'll upload the newest version and delete the old one, but the slides will be materially the same.
you put them in Slack?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank
Yep,
you.
I dropped them in the Intro to Coding channel. So they are inside Code Platoon Intro to Coding right here. You should be able to download them from right there.
I wanted to say thank you for what you presented so far. You've done so in, I feel, a good format.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the class is for you guys. So if, and there'll be some more group decisions coming up here once we start getting into the challenges and how we want to tackle that. And Mara, as soon as we're done talking, let's see what we can do here to get you in Slack. I'm guessing, I think you gave me a Gmail account. You may need to check like your updates or your spam or something like that, because it definitely sent it. But we can walk through it together here once class is over. All right. So any other questions pertaining to this stuff? And then I'll just give like a quick overview of functions, and then we'll dive head first on Wednesday evening. Okay, so functions are reusable blocks of code that perform a specific set of instructions that you defined or that are built into the language. Functions can be defined, excuse me, to accept 0 or more input parameters, and in most cases, output or return a value. To declare a new function, use the function keyword followed by the name of the function, which again is the old way. That's just like how we do var, but you're much more likely to run into function in common code than you will var. When a return statement is encountered, the function exits immediately, returning the return value. So the return, so that you see this magenta line down here, return is the last thing a function will do. And we'll get into that. Again, this is just kind of like a quick look at it. We'll cover this again, but this basic function right here is just to add 2 things together, right? So give me parameter 1 and parameter 2, and we're going to have a variable called answer, and our answer is going to be assigned the value of parameter 1 plus parameter 2, and then we're going to return the answer. So if we ran this function and gave it the value of 1 and 2, the value of 3 would be returned out of it. And where a function comes in, and I kind of alluded to this in here, right, is like I've written this whole thing that keys in all of this information. Now I could write a function that takes a object that is structured just like this. And I basically feed my object into my function, and then it will return this sentence for me with the information from the object. But now I could create instructor 2, instructor 3, instructor 4, and instead of having to rewrite the sentence over and over again, it will change each time I give it a different piece of information. And that way, this is a single use. This will only work with instructor 1. But I could, when I write this into a function, and we'll tackle this on Tuesday, I'll show you how this can be turned into a reusable block of code that we can use for any instructor that we have at Code Platoon. All right. So, and again, don't sweat functions yet. Don't let it haunt your nightmares tonight. We're going to beat it up on Wednesday. Everyone will know exactly how to handle functions, what to do with them, the different styles of writing them, why we write them, all of those good things once by the time we're done with this class. So it is 8:58. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording here. Soon as I find my bar.